all, a very warm welcome to everyone on behalf of all of the co-organizers, UNECE, ETIN, JRC, BGRNI, and EIT. So you can see there's been quite a lot of actors involved in this process that have led us to this moment. So it's a very great pleasure to see you all here today. For those of you who do not know me yet, or to put a face to the emails that you've been receiving over the past few weeks, my name is Emanuela. I support the work at UNECE under ETIN. And yeah, so I've been part of this process since the very beginning. And over the past 2 years, it's been really an adventure and a journey working on this. But it's even therefore my greater pleasure to be able standing here in front of you as Master of Ceremonies for our event. So you'll see a lot of me, and I will hopefully effectively guide you through the event, the discussions, and the 3 days of interactiveness. So yeah, it's a great pleasure to see so many familiar but also quite a few new faces here today. And I know that this is a typical thing that a lot of people say in welcoming an event. Today, it's even more so the case because of the strike that we face. So thank you so much to everyone for your patience, for your cooperation. We've really tried to navigate this situation as best as possible, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you again for your understanding here. And while we're already at the thank yous, I would like to thank JRC and DGRNI for your great support thus far. Thank you so much to the EIT House for hosting us today. And thank you also to the German government who is funding not only ETIN, but this event today. So to kick off with the right spirit, please give a round of applause for all of these important African players. Excellent. I'm loving the spirit, and I hope that we can continue with this spirit because there's going to be a lot of rounds of applauses coming throughout. So before we get into the fun stuff, please allow me to say a few housekeeping rules that will just help guide you through the next days and also let you know who you can reach out to for what. So for any administrative procedures from UNECE's side, we have my colleague Oyuna. Oyuna, are you here? Could you put your hand up? Exactly. So that's Oyuna. So if you have any questions, please go to Oyuna. You'll also notice that we have a few cameras and a few photographers walking around throughout the event. So just to make sure, these are Chatham House rules that we will be observing. So the video will only try and capture the spirit of the discussions, but not actually capture the discussions themselves. If you have any questions about this, we also invite you to share about this event, communicate within your network. Please feel free to reach out to Dorothee, who's all the way in the back over there, but also my colleague Olivia, who are taking care of all of these from our side. And then last but not least, please note that we will have several coffee breaks throughout the event. We'll also have a reception tonight and a lunch. Please note that we cannot bring any food or beverages into the meeting rooms. Only water is permitted, but at the reception area, everything is permitted. So please feel free to enjoy that. So now to the more interesting part. What we're trying to do here today is a slightly different format to at least what we're used to at UNECE, but it's very much in the spirit of what we've been trying to do under ETIN. So really the spirit of engaging, connecting, networking, and really getting down to the practical discussion. So it's a learning process for us as well. So we welcome any feedback, and thank you very much for bearing with us throughout this all. Now it is my pleasure to first of all invite our opening speakers already to join us on stage. Please come up front. Salla, please come up. Manuel, if he's already here, and Elisabeth. Unfortunately, Philipp will join us online. But before we start with the opening, Mikael Roman is the coordinator of ETIN and the host of this event. And I hand over to you, Mikael, for a few words.
Thank you, Manuela. Friends, colleagues, welcome to the ETIN Action Forum. You have no idea how long this is kind of emotional saying it, because it's been on our radar now for so many months, and just being here, being able to say that and see so many, just like Emanuela said, when we've had this strike is absolutely fantastic. This has been quite a journey for us. We started 2 years ago with nothing. We tried with a mission to start a network, but a network is something that grows from the bottom up, and we were supposed to do it from top down in a giant organization, by the way. So that was kind of a challenge. And just being able to sit here and look out over all of you, having our members, the member base that has grown, we have more than 50 members now, having managed to also create this great collaboration with JRC and DTR and I, and that has been very useful. And again, thank you so much. I think we're doing something that is pretty unique today. I don't think that this has ever happened, and this is kind of the spirit that we want to proceed. So this is then a moment for stock taking and reflection on our side for 2 years, but it's also an opportunity to think forward, and this is what we're going to do. This is not I just wanted to be explicit, this is not the end, this is the beginning of something, right? And I remember myself, from a little bit personal, that when I first heard of ETIN, I was actually very much enticed by the whole message, the whole idea of having a place or a safe space where I could talk about all the difficulties, the challenges and opportunities of putting transformative innovation into practice. What does innovation-based transformation really means? I was looking for that. I was working in the Swedish government at the time. I was struggling with, I guess, what everyone here is struggling. All of a sudden, we're supposed to do it, and there is no precedent. We haven't done this before in a conscious way. So I needed someone to talk to, and my colleagues weren't the ones to talk to because we were sitting in the same boat. I needed new inspiration. I needed other actors to talk to. So I needed that space, and that's when ETIN came around. I didn't need one expert. I needed someone that was facing the same problem and the same challenge, because the expertise wasn't there. It's never been done before. So in that sense, I gladly took on this role and tried to create this. And over the last 2 years, we've been doing our part in trying to create this space through podcasts, through travels, through policy dialogues, through conferences, etc., etc. And again, it's great to see you all here. Now, we have over those 2 years also generated a couple of observations that I think is kind of useful to put on the table at once, because I think they're going to frame what we're going to do over the next couple of days here. And one is that we actually need a new understanding. It adds to our previous understanding of both innovation and policy. Innovation is kind of the key in this. It's supposed to drive innovation-based or innovation-driven transformations. But what does it mean? Well, we have pretty much an idea of what innovation is, right? We can promote policies and measures, and we understand what generates new products and processes, but we know less about how these products and processes actually feeds into something else beyond what is their sort of target area. So this idea of creating spillovers, synergies, etc., and have that is kind of the core of it. And it also means that innovation is not only technology in this case. That's kind of the first observation and the new layer of our understanding of innovation. The second layer of innovation or understanding here is the layer that it adds to policies. Now we need policies that, again, we know how to drive sector innovation. That's kind of established, but we don't know how to create these links between several innovations, because one sector innovation is not going to drive the transformation. It's about linking different innovation processes. And not only that, they have to go in a direction that goes into, what sustainable transformations. Not all innovation, I would argue probably most of the innovations are actually detrimental to it. It feeds the system that we're already in. So breaking that and putting directionality, having innovation processes hook up in arms is probably one of the greater challenges in promoting policies for the engine of the transformation. Now, there's another aspect to this, and that is that the society itself, in order for this to be transformative, also have to be prepared on the receiver end. We have to have an environment that is susceptible and could bring on the new products, practices, etc., that comes out of the innovation processes. And there are various ways of doing it. Now we talk about procurement. We have in ETIN tried to put an innovation angle to it, but there are all other means. That is something we should focus on. This has also implications for how we work. When you think about it, we are supposed to solve extreme complexity in the sense of we don't know where we're going. Have lots of interrelationships here that we don't know about. There's spurious, there's stochastic, whatever. There are long time frames, etc., etc. But we are supposed to solve that with innovation. Innovation is per definition embracing uncertainty. If we knew where we were going, we should probably not be doing it because it wouldn't be innovation. So there's a paradox here. There's a paradox that goes into actually how we work. The planning, the goal setting, and the execution is not what's going to necessarily lead us to the right direction. We need to prepare ourselves for exploration, and that's a very, very different dynamics. We will come back to that. We have and because it also means that the learning and the experimentation goes very much into the decision making of policies. So this is important. This is really important. Third point is that we are now going to work there are 4 areas here that are very critical. I mentioned directionality, mentioned the link between experimentation and learning, but the question is who is going to coordinate this? There are various potential actors here, and we tend to think about coordination as something from government, and that's probably true. Government has a big role in that. But there is another coordinator that we normally don't recognize as a coordinator, but that is actually the market. The market coordinates demand, supply, resource allocation, etc., etc. The question is, what role and when is the market having a role, and when should government also play out its role? But there is also another one, and that's the ethics, the social institutions, etc., that makes us don't want to do some things, and it unites us around causes. The whole point here is that these are things we have to dig into. Now, the final observation that we also have had in ETIN is that it's time to take the next step. And that is not because it's urgent only. I mean, it is urgent. But there is another point, and that is that when we think about this as experimentation, implementation becomes actually the very laboratory in what we are doing. Like I said, the planning has its importance, needed, but we really need to think about how we actually experiment and do things and learn as we go. And so this is what we are going to focus on this one. What are the opportunities that are out there? What is that going to drive us to do things? And what is preventing us from doing that? What are the barriers? Those are things that we will discuss over the next couple of days. Now, finally, I just want to sort of welcome you all. We will have 3 outputs from this event, and one is a resume of the new learning about innovation itself. 2, a summary of the guidelines and perhaps the design criteria for doing things instead of just having the goals and in our front, but rather support exploration. Finally, we want to also have a path forward. So see this as an event where we together create a discussion for the future. With that said, very welcome, and please.
Thank you, Thank you, Michael, for the framing. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to start introducing the opening panel. first with Ms. Salla Saastamoinen. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Deputy Director General of the Joint Research Center, who's been an essential partner to this whole process, providing content and input. So please, Salla, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to be with you here today on this first Transformative Innovation Action Forum. So, to discuss and to contribute to the future of the transformative information policy is really fitting to the Joint Research Center. First, let me start by thanking for the great cooperation, great collaboration, our partners at the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, and under that also with the ETIN. So it has been this kind of cooperation. I think we are doing something which is very fundamental to accelerate the mainstreaming of the system change to approach to this policy making. In the European Commission, we are ourselves currently in a kind of transition. You know that there was the European Parliament elections last summer, so it's currently the transition between the two commissions. We know the new president, it's the old president at the same time, Ursula von der Leyen, and we know now also the first policy context for the new commission, with the political guidelines from July and with the very recent mission letters to the commissioner designates. Any policy, also policy on the innovation, requires the political context and political backup. I must say that we are, and you are now lucky to be having a new commission that is very supportive to the innovation. If we look at those political contexts, I think that there are three words that are coming very strongly there. It's an innovation, investment, and implementation. Innovation in the sense that the big goal of increasing the competitiveness and prosperity of the European Union is not possible without research, innovation, scaling up. That way, this comes as a mission for several commissioners to have it innovative part. Investment in the sense that the next commission, during the next commission, the EU will discuss about the next financing framework, the multi-annual financing, but the public side and public funding from the EU level or from the member state is not sufficient. It requires also the private investments. So everything that you are also then discussing on this direction, how will we do it? Not only that's the goal, but how do we go there? It requires investment, and there the Commission is very also involved and wants to be contributing. And third, implementation. And that implementation is actually coming then to the success of the both and the green and digital transition. There was a lot of already measures, regulatory framework, policy goals, commitments. They are there to make the EU and the European Union more sustainable, but it has to be implemented. And also there, then we go to the let's say the concrete action, what has to be now taken. So it's the combination of the three aspects for the next years. I refer also to the background of these policies, for example, of the reports of the Mr. Draghi's report on the European competitiveness, or earlier it was Mr. Letta's report on the single market, which both raised the areas of the research and innovation in very high. They also raised the need for the coordinate between the member states for the shared goals, and that is then what the Commission from our side is trying to boost in a various way. We try to boost that cooperation at national level, but also on the regional level, including then the future cohesion policies. So there I come then to us, the Joint Research Center. We are the scientific service of the European Commission, and we are invested in promoting the transformative innovation and the innovative ecosystems efficiently around the EU and in cooperation with our partners. And that type of the development, it must go in all levels of the governments and policy areas. So today I will talk about our JRC approach on the innovation and to transformation from the place-based perspective. It's a place-based innovation that we are researching, and the results are telling that that is the way to go ahead, that should be promoted. We understand that today's challenges, they manifest at the local and regional level. So we need also policy responses that bring solutions there at the local and regional level, and that are coordinated to take into account all the societal areas. So we provide evidence, but the policies are taken in the Commission through our policy DGs. So I'm very happy that also today or in this event you have colleagues from our from the DG Climate Action and from the DG Research and Innovation to discuss, besides our colleagues coming from the JRC. We do research, but we want to make an impactful research. So with many territories across the EU, we have created an action book. So that way to make impact. So it's an action book, a practical guide to support innovation policies that drive systematic transformation. This is part of our work on the partnerships for regional innovation. So coming again to this place-based innovation idea. As a further step, we are launching a new preparatory action that's supported by the European Parliament, and that will be an action for innovation for place-based transformation that starts now in October, so something very topical. You may know that the preparatory actions are new areas, actually something to explore, supported by the European Parliament, and we try to get the new ideas, gather data, and inform that way then the future EU policies and programs. This participation now to our new preparatory action is open to all Horizon Europe countries and Horizon Europe associated countries. So we very broadly we are welcoming then participants, and there's an interested territories. They can submit their interest through a call for expression of interest that will be launched next week. So this is the topical message. Please take a look also on your innovation policies through this type of the action and participating to the new preparatory action. We are emphasizing in the EU indeed the experimentation, participation, and also the directionality of the transformative change. These come clearly out from the new European Innovation Agenda that again links the innovation to the European competitiveness and citizens' well-being. Our preparatory action aims then to support it to focus on the inclusive, green, digital societies. And that way, tackling at the European level, it makes the contribution also to the global challenges like the circularity, digital transformation, healthcare, food security, climate adaptation, which come also through from the goals of the new European Innovation Agenda. If and when I would say you are interested in the preparatory action, I refer again to the action book, and we have actually created a course now based on this action book on partnerships for regional innovation, and the participants can use that action books and the new courses to build capacities and actually then to work together and tackle all the issues in a collaborative way. We are in dialogues also with the Transformative Innovation Policy Consortium and the Deep Translation Lab to further enable regions to experiment and to implement the transformative policies. That way, we are also trying to ensure that the innovation is addressed both on the technological but on socio-economic side. So social innovation is something that we are looking at the EU. I also mentioned, for example, the new European Bauhaus as an initiative and project that promotes social innovation By the way, there are also calls coming on the social and financial innovation next year under that program of New European Bauhaus. I'm finishing on this collaboration again because EU and the Commission wants to do something, but we cannot do that alone. So I'm very thankful for the collaboration with the UN Economic Commission to Europe, with our DGs. So I think that if we have a joint commitment to transformative innovation policy, we work together, then we drive the sustainable transition and we ensure that no communities are left behind. I know that you have now in the busy 3 days. I hope I learned that you have innovative ways of now dealing in this or working in these 3 days. So I wish you best success, really rich discussions and the concrete contributions to bring the innovation in regions in the EU forward through these days. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words and also for providing an update on the very important work that JRC is doing. Without further ado, I'll hand over to our next opening speaker, who unfortunately could not join us here in person, actually due to the strike. So luckily we're well adept with online participation. So Philipp Ludewig, who works at the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action of Germany, is joining us here today online.
Yes, I am.
Yes, so we don't see you yet, Philipp, but we're working on it. Yes, there we go. Okay, now you're there. Please, Philipp, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Emanuela. Dear Deputy Director General Saastamoinen, dear Director Türk, dear Mr. Molina, dear Michael, dear innovators and innovation enablers. First of all, as you can imagine, I'm very sorry that I'm not able to speak to you in person today in Brussels. I really would have loved to. So I guess once more, what has been proven to all of us is that teleportation is still among those transformative innovations that we are all longing for, at least in situations like this. But putting all joking aside, the strike at the airport has at least saved me from a very big dilemma. Because my wish to talk to you in person, my wish to take part in the workshops and to have a nice evening with networking with you and a couple of drinks and some nice food, it would have led to an output of more than 300 kilograms of CO2 just for the flight. And while we had yet another summer that was definitely too hot globally, joining you in person therefore would have come at a cost for our already suffering planet. So even if we're not talking about teleportation, that's science fiction, but some very sustainable and still fast method of transportation across long distances would have been very welcome in this situation. Why am I talking to you about this personal dilemma of mine? Well, it's just one example that shows how important innovation is, or at least can be. We need innovation to accelerate sustainable transformation. And we need it to address the increasingly complex challenges that we are facing around the globe. Creating policies and programs to go in that direction, to foster innovation, is part of the DNA of my ministry, of the Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. So just to give a few examples of what we are doing, we have funding programs that are specifically tailored to aid SMEs along the whole way of innovation. We have our startup strategy that also includes startup financing. We recently started a new initiative, the so-called Tailwind for Innovation Initiative, which aims at identifying hindrances to innovation transfer as a basis for future policies to tackle exactly that. And we have many more. Also, as many of you know, and maybe have seen the logo on the display, I can see it at least on my camera here. In 2019, together with the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs, with the Ministry for Education and Research, we founded the Federal Agency for Disruptive Innovation, also known by its short name SPRIND. Since its foundation, I think it's fair to say that SPRIND has become an important player in the European and global innovation landscape, and it has also been a contributor to ETIN. In another collaboration, this time with the Federal Ministry for the Interior, we are currently setting up a data institute which aims at addressing the challenges that we have, at least in Germany, but I think many others can relate with our data ecosystem, and which shall improve the availability and use of data. But even while we in the German government are putting a strong emphasis on innovation policy and on fostering innovation, we also have to realize that on our own, we can only achieve so much, because the challenges we are facing around the globe are just too big. They are too big for each single country, each single government to just tackle them alone. And if we want to bring about meaningful transformation, it means we have to work together. We have to join forces. We must strengthen our cooperation and our knowledge exchange around the challenges and the opportunities for innovation. This is why my ministry decided in late 2021 to join forces with UNECE and to lay the foundation for such a collective effort. Together, the UNECE and us, we set up the network that in the beginning did not have a name, but that is now known as ETIN, the ETIN Transformative Innovation Network. And therefore today, I am personally, but also we in the ministry are very happy to see that over the past 2.5 years, ETIN has grown. It has grown into a very valuable network, a network that's dynamic and has a strong engagement from its membership. We believe that ETIN creates a strong momentum in the very much needed discussions and activities around transformative innovation. And most importantly, it fills a very unique gap in the innovation ecosystem. And staying true to its own premise that we have to work together, ETIN did not stay alone, but also joined forces. And for example, as we just heard from the Deputy Director General, is working together with the EU, but also with the EU OECD and with other players. Moreover, we all heard of the Summit of the Future. ETIN also aligns closely with the Summit of the Future, because both have the goal to address and to shape global responses to the big challenges and problems we're facing today: climate change, inequality, technological disruptions, sustainable development, just to name a few. The ETIN Action Forum that you're joining and that unfortunately I can only see from the distance, over the next couple of days, it will represent a key milestone of the network to consolidate the findings and the insights of the ETIN activities that have taken place so far. And I believe, and I'm very confident, that it will pave the way for new types of partnerships and collaboration, both amongst experts and peers, across Europe and hopefully also beyond. Coming to an end, I would really like to take this opportunity to send a big thank you to the UNECE and to the truly fantastic ETIN team for all the great work they've done. I'm really very sorry I can't do this in person, but it comes from the heart. Thank you for the great work. Thank you for your endless patience with me and with my colleagues. I know it wasn't always easy. And thank you very much for your relentless efforts that has made ETIN such a great success. It has been a real pleasure working with you during the last 3 years. This being said, I wish all of you on premise in Brussels a very successful and insightful ETIN Action Forum. Let's create energies to bring about transformative innovation, and let's pave a way, a new path into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you also to you for the kind words, but also for your support over the past 2 years. It has indeed been a journey, but we're very happy to see what this has led to. So thank you very much, Philipp. And now it is my pleasure to hand over to Mr. Manuel Irun Molina, EIT Liaison Officer. Please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thanks for the possibility to be with you all this afternoon. Thank you, Salla, as well, and Philipp, for sharing these views from your side as well. So who we are? So we are the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. So we are your hosts these days. So we are very happy that this event is happening here. So not only welcome you on behalf of my director, Martin Kern, that was in Brussels these days as well, and he is building another community right now in the Parliament with all the 50 plus European agencies. We are one of them, so we are one of the bodies, agencies of the European Commission. So you are today seated at the house. That is not only a house, it's a hub. It's definitely the second thing I want to address to you, not only the welcome, but also the congratulations. Because I think it's we know well how difficult it is to bring together not only people, but a community that have different views, different perspectives, but at the end you have a common purpose. And this is what it's all about at the EIT. We now have to, let's say, experience with the community spirit because it's part of our genetics. So we received the mandate back 15 years ago to establish, let's say, the network of knowledge and innovation communities in Europe. So we started first with what we call the first wave KICS, knowledge innovation communities on digital, climate, and energy, that they are close to you, because offices in this house as well. We keep going later on, welcoming to the family, the communities that are dealing with raw materials, with health, innovations in Europe. And a bit later, it was all about the food value chain that was also joining us. Also important to mention that we completed the current picture with the other three knowledge and innovation communities, one in manufacturing, in urban mobility, and even more recently on culture and creativity. And now we are really excited because we received the green light from our Commission colleagues in DGAG with all the services to launch a new community on water, marine, and maritime innovation. So this will be very soon. The whole community will be able to launch early next. But not only that, I think it's this is why it's so important for us to host you here, because it's not only about welcoming, it's not only about celebrating, but it's also about common intelligence and what comes out here. Yesterday, Martin and Salla were reflecting about the future as well, and the next program, but also new topics, new areas where our work could be even more strength thanks to societal challenges around us. So we identify areas where we could keep working together. But allow me to go back in times also in this welcoming, because of course our model says that it's not about the top-down forcing innovation to emerge. It's more on the contrary, so bottom-up. So we left the ground to these communities to decide in which areas they could really make the difference on innovation and how to imagine a portfolio of activities in the education side, in the business creation side, in the innovation side to bring all this together as part of our knowledge triangle model. And of course, it was very rapidly known, thanks to Christian Matti as well, that I see him on the room, that not only technological transformation came into the arena, it was also systemic transformation. And it was the moment on discussing about transition thinking, about multi-level. So this kind of elements that were not easily, let's say, in the agenda 10 years ago, right? So it was very good to see our communities also reacting to the opportunities of the market of tech innovations, but also to think differently, bringing people together, saying, let's reflect on the societal challenge from different perspectives. Let's analyze the value chain. Let's see what the consumer says, what the final, let's say, users of this technology may think about it, what we are doing. So this is why you are here, because some of the knowledge innovation communities have been interacting with you, particularly Climate Cake, but EIT Food, as far as I know, and others that I invite you to discover more and to get together with what they are doing, because definitely you will learn that there is many activities that at the end go in the direction of what we want to, let's say, bring to Europe. That is how to make innovation happen. So how to operationalize exactly what you have in your brains, in your minds, in your, let's say, spirits in these days, and how the kids, the knowledge innovation communities of the EIT can help you to put this in practice as well. Of course, we will be very eager as well to learn from your policy reflections, as it was mentioned before, because we need to keep feeding policy in order to help us, Europe, as a world, to accelerate. I love the word that I think was Philipp mentioned, to accelerate the process. We don't have time to wait. We are really all in the same boat to help accelerating those dynamics that are outside there, to really help the regulators to bring the next agenda forward, and hopefully the EIT also to be the player for your endeavors. With this, it's my pleasure to welcome again to the EIT House. A lot of success for these days. Don't hesitate to interact also with colleagues from the different KICs that will be around, because this is their hub as well. And if you have any idea, any imagination on what else could be done, please let us know. We'll be around to listen and to hear and to cooperate with you.
Hosting us at the hub, as you say, and I think we'll have very inspiring discussions here over the next few days. Now, Ms. Elisabeth Türk, our Director of Economic Cooperation and Trade.
Okay, Manuela. So we are actually already so much into the substantive discussions. We are still in the opening segment, but that was such a rich discussion. So let me see whether I can add a few cents here. But let me start by thanking Ms. Salla Saastamoinen for the wonderful cooperation with your team. And I really, as I mentioned before, I think that worked so well, and I saw so many smiles and happy faces and excitement about this cooperation. And Mr. Philipp Ludewig, Philipp, if you're still with us, it was so wonderful for me to hear how engaged you are and that you have your heart with us here in ETIN. And I would like to thank BMWK for being our donor, for making this possible. And I really look forward to taking that further. And Mr. Manuel Irun Molina, thanks for being such a wonderful host. You're really like treating us so well here. We are right in the center, and I can feel literally the excitement that also comes with respect to you being our host here. And thank you to all of you who have traveled here. And Philipp, you mentioned that the carbon footprint. So just a side remark, I took the train, Geneva, Paris, Paris, Brussels. It is possible to do that by train. So thank you to everybody who traveled here for joining us for these 3 days. Now, we are in Brussels, where the European Commission is having its headquarters. And my welcoming remarks are on behalf of UNECE, the Economic Commission for Europe. And here we have a little bit like sort of very similar acronyms. But let me say a few words about UNECE and put this in context. UNECE is the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. So we are part of the UN Secretariat. We are one of the regional economic commissions dealing with European Union countries, EFTA countries, North American countries, US and Canada. And very importantly, also dealing with what we call 17 program countries in Central Asia, Southern Caucasus, Western Balkan, and Eastern Europe. And from a development perspective, it's part of our job in the UN, and this is very close to my heart. We really want to help these countries in their development path. And I'm super happy to welcome so many faces from and colleagues and friends from these regions. And I think we have already before discussed what is happening in Tashkent on Innovik, what is going to happen in Dushanbe, in digital Tajikistan. Yeah, I see Montenegro here. I see colleagues from Ukraine, and I think I saw Armenia somewhere, and Kazakhstan. So it's lovely to have you all here, and I think it's our part from the UN to also connect countries, to connect the European countries with countries that are maybe a little bit like around Europe. So a very well welcome to everybody who has traveled, including from far. Now, myself, I'm also super excited to be here, and I totally enjoyed the hours I already spent with you. There was so much dynamic, so much sort of like good vibes, and this is really needed right now, because if I think about where we are a little bit in a complicated situation right now. In the UN, we care about the Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 agenda that was adopted in 2015. And if we look at where we are, less than 20% of the goals are on track. So we are really, really lagging behind. In the UN, we've just had the Summit of the Future, and thank you for mentioning it before. But we also know that the text was significantly watered down, and it was very, very challenging. And in the UN, we are just coming out of the General Assembly where war and conflict were really sort of like a central theme. We talk about Ukraine, we talk about Gaza, we talk now about Lebanon, we talk also about many other conflicts, and we know that there is many hidden conflicts. So we are in a very difficult situation as the world right now. And this is why it made me feel so good to get all the good vibes that you were having here already at the beginning. And this also brings me to innovation, because I'm really not an innovation expert. If I think, like, I go by maybe trade nerd or investment nerd or by UN bureaucrat. But what I understand, having engaged with the ETIN team over the past years, is that we really need innovation to meet the challenges of today. And the big challenges on the UN agenda, be they food systems, be they climate, be they biodiversity, pollution, or health related, as you mentioned before. And as I have learned, and the speakers have mentioned it in such an able way already before me, not any type of technological change, but what we need is transformative innovation. Innovation that goes in the right direction with the directionality to achieve the positive outcomes that we want to achieve. And innovation that is not pure technological change, but that really kind of is innovation for us as societies and economies. And I'm really proud that with ETIN, we are trying to move us all a little bit in that direction. And so once here again, thank you to BMWK and to SPRIND for making that possible in this way. Now, just a few words about ETIN, and Michael, you've already so ably spoken about it. We launched ETIN a little bit more than 2 years ago at an event called TOS ICP in Geneva. So that was part of our normative machinery, our intergovernmental meetings. And I can only tell you, it is a real challenge for us as like international bureaucrats organizing meetings between member states and votes to launch something as creative as a transformative innovation network. Yeah. So this was not easy, but I think we can be proud of what we have achieved and what we have yielded in terms of results. And I think in doing so, we actually also applied transformative innovation ideas or patterns, because if you compare to what ETIN is now and what was in the project document, it's a little bit different. We had to evolve along the way. If you look at what we did, you will see that certain things worked and certain things did not work. So we basically had to learn from failure or take failure as an opportunity. We had to experiment along the way. So somehow I feel that ETIN is also a little bit an example of a transformative innovation outcome, particularly if you think about where it is located in a huge bureaucracy like the UN. So that was a very interesting sort of path we've been on. And I think we are now at the juncture. We are now have seen the ETIN baby grow. It has become more independent, and we would like it to be even more independent. I think we are now where individual ETIN core group members take on more and more sort of like action and leadership in terms of carrying this forward. And I'm very, very happy to see this. We are also at the stage where I think we can further accelerate through partnerships. And this is once again, thank you, Ms. Salla Saastamoinen, and also to our hosts here. This is really where we want to go next in terms of like developing the partnerships. So I think I will close it here. Once again, great pleasure to be here. Huge thanks to the team, Michael, Manuela, Olivia, Anders, and also to the team in Geneva. I've seen many of the icons on the screen. Jakob and Ralf, and also Yuna, who is with us here today. Thank you to our donors, partners, and hosts. Thank you to all of you who have traveled and for making this a success. And I think I'll cut it here because we are way beyond time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth, and thank you very much to all opening speakers for the great kickoff to our event. Please take your seats again, and I would actually ask already the panelists to come on stage for the next session. So please, Ola, Johanna, Stefan, please take your seats right next to us. So now we have actually a very interesting start to the program. So as you could have seen from already the agenda, we have a half day today planned for you, where we're really providing the framing and introduction. And then day 2 and 3, we will go a little bit more into detail and into sort of the nitty gritty of things. So I think, Elisabeth, are you all set for your? Mikael, do you think we're set for starting the panel?
Both yes and no, because there was a little thing here that I just found outside here. If there's someone who kind of recognizes it, if there was something that you bought for your kids or whatever. You know, you can see, I don't know, it's I checked him out. He presents himself as Rex, Thomas Rex. And it's a dinosaur, okay? And this dinosaur, as we know, it's kind of artifact of great obstacles from the past that we sort of don't want to get rid of. And this fellow, he died. There is no DNA from, well, in me that is a dinosaur. And in a sense, isn't this, and I thought it was actually kind of interesting when I found it was almost symbolic, because isn't this what we all were talking about? How to actually get rid of our, oh, check that one out, is a dinosaur, the dinosaurs that we have, that we want to need to get rid of. The dinosaurs in terms of big polluting industries, the administration that is just slow and cumbersome, the cognitive dinosaurs in our heads. It works at all levels. So getting rid of the dinosaurs is something that we all struggle with when we go into transformation. The thing is, though, that the dinosaur was an evolution. It took millions of years for them to die out and disappear. And what we're trying to do here is speed up this process by promoting innovation. So the innovation, and I come back to what I said earlier, this creates something that feeds right into what we're going to do now. This is a very, very different process than what we're used to. We do not know where we're going. We know that the path that we have been following so far is not necessarily the right one. We need to change things. So with that said, the process of exploration becomes very, very important. And why is that important for us now that we are going to have this discussion? It is important because, as I said, it is not about planning. It's about trying things. It's about trying to implement. And the implementation becomes the laboratory of everything that we want to do. But it also means another thing, and this is why you're here. Because it means that the knowledge base for what we're doing isn't necessarily the old traditional expertise in the terms of, you know, academic expertise. There is not one expert. The expert is the one who is doing it. So that is why you are here. We wanted to create a space where the unusual suspects, those who never meet, come and sit and talk about their expertise. You are all experts. There is no one expert here. There is just a bunch of experts that are going to sit and exchange ideas and not being lectured, but converse. And this is what we're going to do. So over the next couple of days, we have planned it out, as someone said from JRC, that this is, think about an opera. We need a narrative. We need someone that facilitates this sort of a curated, facilitated debate. Think about it as an opera. There's going to be 3 acts. But before anything else, in an opera, you have an overture. You have an overture that presents and lays out what is coming up in the opera. What is where we can get a chance to see, calibrate our knowledge about and our insights, and try to identify the different themes, and think about them in themes in an opera, you know, that will come out. And this is what's going to happen in this first panel, where we will discuss the transition or the transformation of the steel industry, potentially. And so this gives you kind of a foretaste. And over the next couple of days, we are now, that is tomorrow and Thursday, we're going into the opera itself. That will then be a little bit more, it's not scripted music, and this is the point. It is jazz. We are going to play jazz over the next couple of days, and we're going to have variations on a theme. And the question here, the theme is the question how. How do we confront and how do we take on the opportunities and barriers that are preventing us or perhaps driving us to actually put transformative innovation into motion? And how do we reach real impact? And thirdly, in the third act, how do we move forward together? That's what we're going to talk about over the next couple of days. And with that said, I just wanted to make a little bit of an interesting observation. You know, these guys, they died, but not all of them. I have the great privilege of working in the Amazon for a couple of years, and they're actually birds, very, very beautiful birds that look very different from ordinary birds because they are still have the DNA of dinosaurs. So they transform, they adapted to the new world. And I think this is kind of a neat segue to go into this next panel, because what we're talking about here is an old industry that is seeing where players are seeing opportunities in this new world that they might be actually beautiful birds. The dinosaur became a bird, right? So maybe that is a sort of an intro, and let this little fellow, let Thomas be the kind of the thing that remembers why we're here. And with that, please, Elisabeth, go on.
Thank you, Mikael. Let me try to make friends with him. Yeah, so we want to learn from him and be nice to him. Great introduction. So it's my great pleasure to moderate this first really panel, which is a stellar panel. And Mikael, as you already said, which looks at one of the world's hugest challenges today, climate. And we've just seen the floods in Central Europe, including my country, Austria, severely affected. And that looks at one of the most challenging sectors, steel, one of the so-called hard-to-abate sectors, and all of this hopefully being an example of how we look at innovation. Now, we will also have to be innovative here because we are running seriously over time already. We started a little bit late. We had originally scheduled an hour 10 for this discussion. Maybe we don't do an hour 10, but I still would like us to really benefit from the expertise we have here and sort of like not cut too much time here. Now, as I said, we have a stellar panel with us here, and we have in the room Mr. Ola Hansen, who is Director of Public Affairs of Stegra in Sweden, and thank you for traveling here. We have on the screen with us Mr. Jorge Abras, who is Professor of Economics, University of Brasilia in Brazil, and also was a Vice Minister in Brazil before. We have with us also here Mr. Stefan Büttner, from Director Global Strategy and Impact Institute of Energy Efficiency and Production in Germany. And we have from Brussels here. You're joining us from Brussels, Ms. Johanna Schiele, Policy Officer in DG Klima at the European Commission. So I think we really have a wonderful lineup with very different perspectives coming together on this issue of steel. Now, I know we are running late, but I would still like to share a brief story of why I'm really excited about the steel discussion here today. So let me say that as an Austrian, I'm coming from a steel region. I grew up in a city called Kapfenberg, where we had a huge steel plant. My dad was a Montanistic person. He actually constructed the blast furnaces, and they were selling the blast furnaces and coming to other countries. My mom was a working mom, so my dad brought us to the kindergarten, and it was the Werkskindergarten of the steel plant. I afterwards went to school, and many of the parents and dads in our school in the steel crisis lost their job. So we were all hugely affected from the steel crisis. And I then went on to study, and I studied law. And what was the exciting thing to study was European law, where you learn about the European communities about coal and steel. So steel came back again in terms of like this unifying idea or peace project in the European context. So steel for me has shaped my life in one way or the other. And I'm really excited about looking at it now, not only in terms of one of the biggest challenges, but I think also in terms of one of the biggest opportunities. And I hear from the innovation crowd that it's all about turning challenges into opportunities. And from what I understand, Ola, you at Stegra, you are trying to do exactly this, and you have a very fascinating story to tell. So I invite you to either, if you would like to do it from here or from there, as you wish to, but maybe you want to come here. And Ola, you also explained to me when we last talked a little bit the name Stegra, because you just renamed from H2 Green Steel to Stegra. And for me, that was really a very telling way of what you're trying to achieve. So many thanks for having traveled, for being with us, and please do inspire us with your story.
Okay. I will try to shorten it as well, so we have time to discuss in the panel. I thought maybe we would omit that part, but okay, I give the introduction here. As you heard my introduction, I'm working with public affairs, mainly, of course, EU policy, because that's really the most crucial for us. We are a fairly new company, only 3 years old. The product itself is 4 years old, so we are an industrial startup now trying to scale steel production here in Europe. So, I mean, we are in a way, I would say, maybe slightly different from the existing industry, that we are a purpose-driven company. We have a purpose, which is sort of the highest hierarchy, is to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors. Hard-to-abate meaning sectors that are hard to decarbonize. You can't electrify them. You need to find new solutions, innovative solutions out there to go there. And steel, next slide, steel is sort of the first sector we address really going forward. But we see that with the green hydrogen, the renewable-based hydrogen production, we also can use this in other applications in other sectors to help to decarbonize them as well. Yeah, you can go next. And why steel? We heard it here. It's a great material. We need it in so many things, especially for green transition we're doing now. Steel is an absolute essential material, but it's also, unfortunately, a very high, stands for a large share of the global emissions of carbon dioxide. So should we meet the Paris Agreement and sort of handle the climate crisis we're in, we need to find solutions to get the emissions down also in this sector. Next slide. Decarbonizing is one of the aspects we're trying to be innovative and new in, but we also have other aspects we try to create the leadership in. And one thing is sort of when it comes to diversity and equality in the sector. Our management C-level is a 50-50 gender-based management, and that's kind of unusual in the industry as a whole, but especially in the steel sector. And we try to have this ambition in the whole company. Also, when it comes to digitalization, I think we have a benefit here with building totally new plants. So of course, we can fit this in directly when we design the plants, so don't have to retrofit. Next slide. So how did the whole idea and project start? It was actually at the meeting with an automotive company talking about decarbonization and talking about batteries and how to electrify the fleet. And once you electrify, and assuming that the electricity is sort of fairly fossil-free or almost, has zero emissions, then suddenly the input materials to the car becomes the largest source of carbon emissions. So then upstream, as we call it in sort of the climate reporting lingo, is crucial, and steel stands for more than 20% of the emissions in an electrical vehicle, actually. So in order to go for full decarbonization, once you electrify, next step you want to look in input materials, and steel is one of the most important things. Of course, then policy here, regulation. We would not exist if it wasn't for the Fit for 55 package. So there, the European legislation is absolutely detrimental or necessary for us. It's detrimental maybe for others, but for us it's absolutely necessary to make this happen actually. And then there's other aspects. We have the hydrogen, in a way, discussions about hydrogen, but also in US there have been a lot of new steel mills built according to a new, faster and rapid way of building them, the so-called mini mill concept. In Europe we have not built any new mills, but there is sort of knowledge in the world how to build new steel mills in a very fast and rapid way. So these all brought together the idea we can actually do this, and we can do it in the north of Sweden, where you have renewable electricity at the cost. Next slide. At the cost, at a good cost, and also there are other input materials that you need. You have the iron ore, we have the water that we need for our processes. So our first project will be in the north of Sweden in the town called Boden. And this is what the plant is supposed to look like when it's done. So it's not what it looks like now. Next slide. And as this production is based, you could say, on 3 platforms. It is hydrogen that is fed with renewable electricity. We have had the iron making, which really is where you do the heavy lifting on the decarbonization, where you use the hydrogen to, instead of then carbon, to go from iron ore to pure iron. You use the hydrogen to take the oxygen out of the iron ore to get pure iron out of that process, and then you make steel out of that iron. Next slide. And I'm not going to go into details here, but with this process, you could compare to what sort of the general method of making steel in Europe. You could reduce the emissions with 95% per ton of steel by replacing the coal. So this is sort of where we do the decarbonization. Next slide. We are sort of in our second chapter as a company, you could say. First chapter is, of course, getting the concept there and getting it fully financed. And that's been a hard task, but it's been possible, and it has, to some extent, also included innovation aspects, trying to structure a project like a more infrastructure project rather than an industrial project has been a way to get it financed. And you can see here the shares, and we are very happy also to get support from the EU with the EU Innovation Fund. So this financial, getting the project fully financed was achieved about 6 months ago during winter time. So now we're in the construction phase. Next slide. Okay, this is also, and I think one other aspect that is linked to innovation is, since we don't have any assets, we need to have some other collateral for our loans. So how do we create that? And that was sort of making sure to show that there was a demand for our product, or decarbonized, you call it green steel. And in order to get the finance there ready, we had to secure then contracts with the automotive industry to really show that they were willing to buy this. And normally steel is sold over the counter for very short-term contracts, but in our case, we managed to secure take-or-pay contracts that are 5 to 7 years long for almost half of the, at least I think even more than half of our first initial production volume. And not only with the steel price, the regular market price, it's called brown steel, it also has a premium on top of that. So it also making sure that we can show that there's a demand, and there's also willingness to pay extra for the green steel. So this was crucial for us to getting the contract there. We can or the finance there. So these are drivers, of course. Also, it's not only that they want green steel to meet their climate targets in the sectors like white goods and automotives, which our customers are in. It's also, I mean, they foresee also maybe more regulation and that cost will go up. So it's also a way of securing that you actually have steel at the competitive price. Next slide. And this is just to show where we are, or we were this summer. I think we have come even further in the construction now. So constructions are really ongoing. The plan is to start operation in 2026. And from there on, it's our new chapter, our third chapter, to really show that, prove our concept really that this works. And I think the innovation on the technology side is more linked to scale and integration, putting all these parts together. I think they're proven, most of them, part by part in small scale, but now we put them all together in a large scale. So that's sort of the innovation in that part. See if there were any more slides I don't recall. Yeah, we work with other aspects, of course, local environment, local community. Everyone who wants to discuss that, I can, at the corporate break, go into that deeper. Last slide. I think just on the name, it's a long plan. We used to be H2 Green Steel, but that's a very generic name, and it says only steel. And as I said, we want to go into other sectors as well, so it's limiting in that way. So our new name is Stegra, which means stepping up in Swedish. So this is the brand we're now building from now on. Thank you.
you, Ola. This is really, really fascinating. And I'm thinking, you mentioned that like you have the technological aspect, yeah, the hydrogen aspect, but the change you're describing is much more systemic. So, and I think this is the steel sector, and this is the many sectors, be it the mobility sector, the cars, be it the energy sector, where this change and this transformative innovation will ultimately also be implemented. I found this really, really fascinating. And I also found it fascinating what you said about the drivers of change. Yeah. So you mentioned on the one hand the policy side, and I think that's something very much discussed here in Brussels and in many of our capitals, including I read something in the German newspaper about this the other day. Yeah. But you also mentioned sort of the demand side, the customers, and that I guess is both the automotive industry, but in the end, even the person who is buying the car. And so I found this part about the drivers really, really interesting as well. You mentioned you're up in northern Sweden, Boden, yeah, far up north, and we are all eagerly looking at what is happening there. And I'm wondering whether sort of that location, why you chose that location, and whether that has anything to do with the type of transformative innovation that you are planning or that is unfolding there. And I also was intrigued, you mentioned several times saying that steel is just the beginning, but that you're looking far beyond steel. So I don't know whether you can maybe say a few more words about up far in northern Sweden, why there, and what's next?
I think, yeah. Is this?
Yeah, there is a button just
okay.
there.
I don't want.
How should be? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So let's see. Hello. Okay. Yeah. There we are. Location. I think the logic, in a way, industrial logic changes when you move from the blast furnace, which is coal-based, and to when you come to go for electrification or for renewable hydrogen production. I mean, the old industry is a place where you had the iron ore or where you have the coal, and now the electricity really is the new input that determines really the cost for your production. So the sort of the existence of sort of abundant renewable electricity in the north was really why we went there, and that's also why it's a challenge maybe for where a lot of steel industry is located today. And I think we need to rethink the value chain. We need to really keep steel production in Europe. It's crucial in many aspects, but we must also rethink the value chain. Maybe the iron making, which is the most energy intensive part, needs to be solved in different ways, and maybe not keep the steel mills, but not keep the iron production in a way. Also, the second question was also on
what's next?
Yeah, I think we really need to prove the concept in the north before we get too eager to do too many new things. But of course, hydrogen can be used for maritime fuels in the future. You could also use it in the aluminium sector in another aspect than in steel, but also you could use it in other sectors to decarbonize.
Super, thank you. So that would be going again from the hydrogen into other sectors and other sort of like.
And I think systems. We have a pipeline. We have been publicly communicated, but they are all steel or iron projects in Europe or in South America or Northern America.
So thinking big. Thank you for that. And that brings me what I mentioned at the beginning. I'm from the steel area in Austria, Kapfenberg. So yeah, there we had the iron ore and we had the coal. Yeah. So the question is whether what you're doing up north in Sweden is maybe not directly transferable to the steel situation in mind.
Yeah, I think we need to be and humble about that. We need to find several solutions for the steel sector going forward to decarbonize.
Very, very interesting. And I'm thinking we had so many discussions about regional and place-based innovation in the break before. Yeah, and I somehow feel that that's also something to look at and to deep dive a little bit more in terms of what do we do with the different regions. Yeah. Now, one last comment that I found really interesting, Ola, because we talk about the change in the sector. Yeah. You also talked about the change in the business model. Yeah. You explained how you are selling the steel in a slightly different way, and you explained also about the financing. So for me, it was very intriguing that we have the technological change. We have the systems change, steel going into many different sectors. we also have to change within the industry in terms of how you finance and how you sell. So really a lot of totally interesting things that I hope you will all be picking up in the future sessions. So thank you for inspiring us here. Now we have 3 more speakers or commentators, and we were a little bit insecure about the order, and the order changed several times on my phone. But the way I see it now, Stefan, Mr. Bittner, I think you would be next. And I already introduced you with your academic affiliation from Germany, from Stuttgart. And as I said, I read the other day in the newspaper that said they were saying some German industry was making some strong comments about the European decarbonization plans. Yeah. So you bring maybe a bit of an academic perspective, maybe a bit of a German perspective, but you also bring a UNECE perspective because you are one of the chairs of one of the many different intergovernmental and expert bodies we are having in UNECE. So once again, thank you for joining us, and please make your remarks from there or from here, wherever you wish.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And whilst you were all talking, I developed an increasing smile because that is very inspiring already. And the last point that I can hook on was yours. That is the notion of steel. Indeed, important in many sectors. Where I'm from, Stuttgart, we have those companies that need that, which is car manufacturers. So the Institute for Energy Efficiency in Production has actually a founding mandate that is quite relevant to the format here, and that is that we were created to enable, inspire, and guide industries so that the energy transition can become feasible for them, and nowadays the decarbonization as well. And as for the many UN bodies that you refer to, I'm also chairing the group of experts in energy efficiency at UNECE, and there particularly also the task force on industrial decarbonization, where we particularly over the past couple of years, so you must have co-inspired us without knowing, broke down the silos across our 6 expert groups that span from renewables over gas, coal mine methane, just transition, resource management, energy efficiency, electricity systems. And we thought about what's needed to transform the energy system to be a resilient one. That is, so you can look at it and we can discuss that later. However, since the time continued, we also thought, as you mentioned, there's a systemic component, and that is not only geographical, meaning location efficiency, which is something that we explore also in the new activity with the transport division on a task force on how can e-mobility work, because there it's a measure also of what is needed where and when, and is mobility actually only necessary when I don't have what I need where I am right now. And therefore the location of manufacturing and the availability of natural resources and the consumer, etc., plays an important role. Now, also as transformation has winners and losers, that question arose, and that was actually the key topic of our major annual thing 2 weeks ago, is how can this transformation also be just? Justness is a word that people understand very differently. From my personal take, it is ensuring that those that would normally be the winners, they may hesitate in leaving their comfort zone voluntarily because they may more see the unknowns. And everything that is unknown is per se a risk, unless you know the risks and therefore you know more. It's whatever you do for the first time, there's a risk. As once you have it done once, you know what the risk is, and therefore the move might be much easier. But also there are actual losers in the process, and that comes when we have transformation of industrial sectors where people lose their jobs. And if we say we are here and we need to go there and just say, okay, this is the goal, have fun, then we trigger that situation of people being lost in the process. However, if we showcase what path could be taken to manage that from wherever you start from, it gets easier. And if we then succeed by contributing agents of support or facilitation mechanisms or training or financing, then they not only know, okay, we need to get here we need to help them to find out where they are and how they could get there and who can help. So that for me describes a justness, so that we enable people to have a chance and preemptively think who would lose out and devise our transformation approaches to have that in mind, because that way we can be much quicker rather than just running open-eyed into a situation where it will be super obvious that people may resist. And that wasn't in my script, but I guess necessary. Now, when we talk about the different industrial sectors, steel is an important one. However, what's the goal? Is it net zero, essentially? And how much do those 5 sectors make up, the hard-to-abate sectors? 2/3. And can we wait? Or actually, is 2/3 the goal or net zero? What does that mean for us? That means that early on, we need to be cognizant that we also need to address all the other sectors. I just had a glance at the emissions in this heat map that you can't read. So whilst the absolute emissions are highest and the absolute energy consumption is highest in basic metals, when you look at the emission intensity, so emissions per GDP, it's actually the glass industry. If you look at the highest absolute emissions per company, you do have mining and quarrying. So when we were tasked as EEP to identify which of the 10 most important sectors in our journey to net zero, we thought that the exercise was easy, but then going into it, we thought, most important in respect to what? Maintaining jobs, most important to GDP, meaning tax income, most important in terms of number of companies. Is it good to have a few companies that we can train up easily, or is it good if we have many companies in the same sector where we have one approach that reaches many at once? Is it about the energy consumption? Then you realize, wait a moment, there's different types of energy, and there's also different types of emissions, because in the paper industry, for instance, you mostly have energy-related emissions and not really any process-related emissions. So there are different recipes for different types of emissions. And that here, this color, you only need to look at the colors, that highlights the diversity of German industry. And that means where you have a line, where you see difference in colors, it means in this dimension, it is different for that sector than for any other sector. And that way, we now know it's not as easy as one would think, but if we look at what the situation actually is, and that our industry sectors are hugely diverse, we can find recipes to tailor our approaches. And that makes it a systemic transformation, systemic efficiency, meaning not the efficiency of an individual equipment, but the efficiency of a system, such as green steel requires energy for green steel. So where's the combo available? For instance, when we have the conversion efficiency of green electricity to hydrogen, we lose quite a bit. So where do those losses harm least? That is in areas where we can generate renewables cheapest, or where we have surplus electricity that cannot be fed into the grid. And there we also wonder, how can we enable companies and stakeholders to go that journey? And there's the issue, or the situation, that we have so many technology studies, particularly for the hard-to-abate sectors, where we already know this and this and this tech combination can work. However, is it the availability of the technology, or is it finding the right mix, the financing to actually implement it? So the shortage in non-technical solutions that allow stakeholders to actually act. And there we have also micro companies, such as a very small one in the German Black Forest, less than 10 employees. They are very energy intensive. They have lots of laser cutting, but they have solar PV on their roof, and they think, oh, it doesn't run on the weekends, the company, but we need nitrogen. And to pay for the nitrogen cost me 400 euros per month just for the transport. So how about me using the nitrogen to the surplus renewables to generate nitrogen over the weekends and then consume it to save on that? And this company has so many things created for the sole purpose of remaining competitive. And as a micro company, you don't really have that big investment money available. We need to be clever about it. And I think we have lots of clever thoughts here. I'm really excited.
Yeah, Stefan, so many great ideas, and I'm just thinking, like, you started with breaking down the silos, and we just really need to do that also in the UN. We need to do it in UNECE, where we have an economic cooperation trade division, we have a transport division, an energy division, a housing division, a forest division. We don't talk as much, and it, you know, took you and me also quite some time to talk. So breaking down the silos is really, really crucial. I also appreciated the emphasis you put on the need to have a just transition. And again, I think from the UN perspective, that's something we really care about within societies, within countries, but also between countries. And I'm sometimes wondering, maybe some of the countries that typically are left behind, maybe they can actually leapfrog and benefit from some of the change. But thinking about really how to ensure a just transition, to me, seems crucial. And I'm wondering to what extent the question of justness has come up in the ETIN context. And I really kind of want to hear a little bit more about this. And Stefan, you also emphasized again the importance of the systemic efficiency. And I was intrigued here, Vicky, I think I mentioned your Innovation Circle podcast the other day, where you actually talked about investing in where the change is the most profound, if I understood it correctly, yeah? Or somehow like changing the way how we look at investment decisions. And for me, that's also an idea really very interesting to explore for the future also of ETIN. Now, Johanna, you've been sitting here listening and smiling and nodding or looking a little bit questionable sometimes. You surely have so much to add on this. You're policy officer in the Innovation Fund in DG Climate, in the European Commission. So you are one of the institutions that we have been mentioning in terms of creating the policy change, the driver of change. And I'm wondering, what are your reflections about what we've been discussing here? And particularly also, I understand you are like looking or related to the Innovation Fund. What really can we take away in terms of innovation and transformative innovation? Over to you.
Yes, thanks very much. Thanks for the invitation. So maybe to begin with, a short introduction to the Innovation Fund in case you don't know about this fund. The Innovation Fund is the world's largest dedicated clean tech fund with a budget of 40 billion euros to spend until 2030. And we try to tackle the innovation that are not yet commercially viable, but where we know today that we'll need it to reach our 2030, 2040, and 2050 goals. So we are explicitly trying not to crowd out any private capital on investments where there's already a business case, but we try to tackle strategic clean investments and innovation that are not yet commercially viable and where we need to build the first of a kind plant in order to de-risk and in order to get over exactly what you just described. The first time you do it, it's super hard, it's super expensive, it's super risky. Often that's not worth it for private investors. And hopefully the second, third, fourth time, it becomes easier, it becomes cheaper, and at some point there's a business case and you don't need any public subsidies anymore. So that's the goal. In terms of innovation, I think there's two aspects I want to tackle. One is the innovative type of projects that we invest in, like H2 Green Steel or now Stegra. And the other one is also innovation in how we spend our money, because also there we try to think a little bit outside of the box. Maybe let me start with the second one. So the Innovation Fund is funded from European emission trading resources. That means part of the money that the worst polluters have to pay goes into this fund, and we can help the best performers or the most innovative first movers to have an easier time the first time they do it. And I think in terms of a setup, that's really nice because it's a bit of a closed loop where we create money that we can then use to help those who struggle to make the investment to later on not have to pay the CO2 price anymore. So it's really trying to build in a positive feedback loop in the CO2 price and to present industrial investment and the emissions trading system not just as a challenge, it costs a lot, I have to pay the CO2 price, I become less competitive versus China or other countries, but also as a chance for industry because this creates revenues and this creates an incentive for the best players to have an easier time in making difficult investments. Secondly, that also means that we're not in the multi-annual financial framework of the EU, so we're not in this 7-year long-term budget planning, which gives us a lot of flexibility. We can spend money a lot quicker and we can the rules under which we spend money a lot quicker as well. And I think this is crucial because often when you have a planning approach and you do a bottom-up planning of a multi-year spending framework, by the time that you arrive in the year where you're going to spend, what you thought 3 years back was innovative is actually no longer innovative. So we really try to analyze our portfolio constantly and identify the areas in which investment is needed, but maybe also those in which public investment is no longer needed and where we can move resources to other more risky areas. So renewables are a great example. Renewables were really expensive 20 years ago. There's been lots of actors who built a lot, invested a lot, learned a lot. Renewables are now one of the cheapest energy source of all of them. So there's really no need anymore for public subsidies where capital costs are low. So this is something we want to avoid doing. And then lastly, in terms of how we spend the money, I've been coordinating a new auction for renewable hydrogen. So rather than bureaucrats assessing projects and trying to decide which is the best and trying to scrutinize the data that the private sector gives us, we've been instead designing an auction for the subsidy for renewable hydrogen production, which puts a lot of the business development and tech risk back to the private sector where it belongs and where it can be handled much better than in a big bureaucratic institution like the Commission. And on the other hand, we really create competition between these project developers for the lowest subsidy need possible, and those who have the lowest need while still meeting sustainability and RFNBO standards, they will get the money from us. So that's hopefully an innovative way in how to spend the money that will make tracks in other areas as well. I'm going to stop here and happy to speak more about the type of projects that we found later.
Super, Johanna. Really interesting. And so it's not only the what to invest in, but it's also the how to invest. So we are basically also seeing here a change in how we operate. And I love the idea when you say like you're moving things away from the bureaucrats to somewhere else. So that is surely important, but we also know how challenging it is. Yeah, if I'm thinking what that would mean for us in UNECE, very challenging, but very, very intriguing. Now we have one more speaker who has been with us from Brazil on the screen. Let's see whether we can bring him onto the screen. And who I guess has also been listening to us already. George, yes, we can see you. Mr. Jorge Abras, who is a professor of economics at the University of Brasilia. And Jorge, you were also formerly vice minister in the Brazilian Ministry of Planning. We've mentioned planning many times now. And the head of international department on foreign investment. And you have also huge experience as vice president of the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean. Now, we are sorry to miss you in person here, but we're very happy that you join us online. And I'm thinking you're bringing such a much needed perspective from far outside Europe. Yeah. And you've been maybe listening to the debate here, which maybe was a little bit Eurocentric. And I would love you to share sort of like an outsider's view on what we have been discussing, but please also chip in with your experience on the investment side, on the ministry side, and with that, over to you. Let's see whether we can hear you.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth, and thanks. I'd like to thank ETIN for inviting me for this fascinating conversation and event. Michael was saying in the very beginning that we need to have a broader perspective regarding innovation. And he mentioned some words that I really found fascinating and important. He mentioned spillovers, synergies, and complementarities, this type of things. I think that he also mentioned that innovation should not be seen as something that is about technologies, and it should be seen as something that it goes well beyond technology and new techniques. When we think about the emerging challenges that we have ahead of us, such as climate change, food security, and public health, we very rapidly get convinced that we are talking about challenges that do not respect boundaries. So, and this is a key issue. Take, for example, the case of climate change. Climate change is indeed, or perhaps, the most critical challenge that we have in front of us. And for us to tackle this type of challenge, I think we need also to put on the table a new vision regarding innovation. And what I want to say is that alliances between countries can indeed be part of the solution for us to tackle climate change and the other challenges as well. Think of the case of steel. Ola was talking about the fascinating story of Stigra. Stigra is trying to produce green steel using a brand new technology. This technology will help us not only tackle the decarbonization agenda, but also, and perhaps even more important, will help us in greening value chains. And this is, I think, what makes the story of Stigra so important. But for Europe to, let's say, speed up the process of decarbonization, it may have to consider some critical issues. One is urgency. I know that Europe is accelerating, is doing a lot of things in order to meet its promises with the Paris Agreement, its NDCs, but Europe may still want to consider alliances with other countries for it to speed up the process of decarbonization. But there's another thing, which is costs. The costs for Europe to tackle decarbonization may not be the most attractive one for specific areas and sectors. And there is another one that I consider especially important because of its political implications, which is the green inflation. So Europe may also want to consider alliances with other countries as a tool for addressing some type of uncomfortable positions that some average people may have regarding the green agenda. So what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the idea of seeing alliances between countries, of course, countries that have some common visions regarding key aspects such as democracy and markets, as a tool for accelerating decarbonization and for reducing costs and for speeding up competitiveness of the European industry. Take the case of Ola mentioned the hard-to-abate sectors. Consider the case of Latin America, where I come from. Many countries in the region have very green energy matrix. My country, for example, has an energy matrix that goes above 93% of the matrix. If you consider the marginal cost of reducing that green energy, it is far more attractive than what you see in many other geographies. Take also the case of water supply. Some countries here in the region may have a lot in terms of water reserves. That is critical resource for many hard-to-abate sectors. Take also the case of critical minerals. Many countries, again, in the region have very many reserves in terms of critical minerals. Take the case of biodiversity, or forests, or nature-based solutions, or the carbon markets. All those things also add up to let me say, this productive alliance that Europe may want to have with other countries. And then take the case of biofuels. The region is very well positioned to produce e-methanol, SAF, green hydrogen, and some other fuels at a very attractive marginal cost. So my point is, we call this power shoring. In a nutshell, shoring is a strategy that corporations may want to pursue in order to accelerate decarbonization, reduce costs, and to be in compliance with regulations. So power shoring, power from energy, is perhaps a tool for making or for developing this type of alliances between Europe and some other countries, in this specific case, Latin America. There are some advantages that go beyond competitiveness, marginal costs, the urgencies in terms of time horizons, and this has to do with something that was mentioned before, which is the just and green transition. By co-producing some parts of the value chain in countries that have, or the countries that provide some very attractive conditions, you may also address the just and green transition from at least two perspectives. One, of course, has to do with tackling poverty in those countries that are considered or that could be part of the value chain for decarbonization, and of course income generation in those countries. But if you look at what are the potential benefits for Europe, you will indeed see the increasing potential competitiveness as a kind of a just and green transition, because it may help Europe to keep jobs and even increase jobs in those sectors that may need, for example, the green steel, the auto industry as an example. But there are some other potential benefits for Europe as well. Take the case of what I mentioned before, the green inflation. By producing cheap green stuff in countries like Uruguay or Paraguay or Brazil or Costa Rica, you may also provide the markets with cheap green products. And as I mentioned before, this, from my perspective and from what I read more and more, it may win support from the general public, who sometimes are not that open to support the green agenda. And of course, this is maybe a driver of change and driver of growth. My point is, in coming to an end, is that one potential innovation for transformative innovations, as we are talking and discussing this morning, is making alliances as a key tool for tackling critical challenges that do not respect boundaries. And I think that some countries here in Latin America can indeed be very attractive for Europe to consider as part of their solutions for those challenges, especially the climate change. And my very last point is that all those things may help Europe to address its NDC faster and cheaper. Elisabeth, I stop there, and thank you for listening to me.
Many thanks, George. So Again, many points to pick up on, maybe for future discussions. And just to flag that, of course, the point of cooperation and of building alliances is very core also to the UN, and not only cooperation and alliances between countries that are similar, but also between countries that are complementary. So I think much area for further thought. We were planning to open it up for discussion. I got notice that many of us have to leave, have plans, that we also should not forget the interactive element of our discussion. But before we go into the coffee break, I would like to do one last quick round with really one sentence answers, asking our distinguished panelists about what's holding us back. We've heard so many great things now. We've heard so many ideas, do this, do that, change here, so many opportunities, so many support mechanisms. If you give me your sort of like quick take on what is holding you back, or what is holding us back. And Ola, can I start with you? We go the same order?
Yeah, see if I can get this.
Nothing is holding you back.
I think, yeah, it works. It's many things in a way, but I think what really I addressed here, what really makes it possible is sort of regulation and the enabling environment. I think what we need more in the EU is sort of looking at the funding structure and the public funding. I mean, it's great what DG Klima has done, really. I think it's rarely you say that regulators are innovative, but here you have a great example, really, with the new hydrogen bank. It brings, I think we like the innovation fund as well because it's complex, but I mean, this new way of being very resource efficient with public money is very good, and also support what is the one that leads the companies that need the least is probably the ones that are going to be competitive in the future as well. So it's wise in many ways. But I would look on maybe new ways to find more, especially from a European perspective. We're good at innovation, but then we have troubles in scaling. I think it helped. We made it to this point, but I think for others we need some that public money is also willing to risk and go in, and it can create a lot of leverage to attract more private funding. And then I support a lot. I mean, these new value chains, connections. We need to build alliances also with countries that share our values, but that can also, in a way, we can collaborate and help to build new competitive green value chains.
Super, very, very interesting. Now, Stefan, your take in terms of what is holding us back.
Unknown unknowns, predominantly. So the things that we are not aware of, that we don't know them, which applies to so many different areas. Self-belief. What shall I do? What can I do? The government's taking the decision, particularly from companies' perspective. Is that really the case? There are so many things we can do as individuals, as stakeholders. What holds us back is triggering the decision. So for many companies we looked into, it was more an internal decision not to invest because they weren't aware of the potentials and they didn't know how to, and not the lacking availability of funding. And therefore, empowering, encouraging, and guiding stakeholders is necessary, and not only looking at the efficiency of individual constellations, individual things, but the efficiency of a system, taking the location into consideration. And Jorge, we need to talk.
Super. So a series of points for colleagues to pick up on in the subsequent discussions. And Johanna, from your perspective?
I have two. So the first one is we really need to think more European, and we have to play our joint European competitive advantages. And I think that's a point we heard both from the Brazilian side and from the north of Sweden side. We don't have the same advantages in different regions in Europe. Germany might be great at manufacturing but has really expensive power costs. Sweden might have very cheap power in the north. I think we have to think more as Europe, but we also have to invest more as Europe and play our joint competitive strengths. And then the second point is also playing into what Ola said before. We do need to rethink funding. In Europe in particular, we have a host of private wealth that's very risk averse, and we don't have very well integrated capital markets, and we don't have very deep markets for risk capital. And that's something we have to address if we want to tackle this challenge of more equity funding, more high risk scale up, first of a kind projects. And that needs a holistic, it needs addressing holistically, and not just from a subsidies perspective, but really from a capital markets integration perspective.
Very good point. It's nice how it all ties together. George, your quick take on what is holding us back. And you've already given us the perspective in terms of from Brazil to Europe, but what else?
No, thanks, Elisabeth. I think that this has to do with uncertainty. We have, at least we have to try to see uncertainties as an opportunity, as we all say all the time. But this does not always happen, and we tend to take more conservative approaches, especially when it comes to big challenges and new challenges such as climate change and food security and the digital innovations and these type of things. I think that uncertainty requires new visions, new approaches, new alliances, new ways to structure and to coordinate private and public sectors and private and public actors.
Wonderful. So we have our bucket list of issues to discuss, and I think they will surely inform also the future discussions. Now, I have to admit, we haven't been particularly innovative in the way how we handled this discussion, but I dare to say it was still super fascinating, and I learned a lot, and I have so many ideas. I'm like bubbling to exchange further, and I hope that the coffee break now, the networking reception, and the many interactive sessions that we plan to have will really sort of give us an opportunity to pick up on what was said in this opening panel. So huge thanks to all the speakers, huge thanks to the audience, and I think I hand back over to Manuela. No?
Thank you very much, Elisabeth, for an excellent moderation. Thank you very much, panelists, also for the very interesting narrative that you provided us with as inspiration for the upcoming discussions. And I can assure you that this is as traditional as it will get for our event. From now on, it's actually up to you. So now we hope that you have enough inspiration to go into the interactive discussions that will follow. But for now, we don't want to keep you any longer. We would like to invite you to a coffee break, but not only a coffee break with a hint of speed dating, as we like to call it. So please go into the coffee break, enjoy some beverages, but find someone that you might not know yet. Find one or two people that you haven't met and discuss what were the main insights that you gained from this panel. What was something that was maybe unexpected or something that was absolutely expected? So think a little bit, reflect a little bit, share your ideas. And then in about 15 minutes, you will hear the bell, and most likely you will hear my voice again. That's when we will encourage you to switch, to go to someone new who you haven't met and do the exact same exercise. So please stand up, get moving, and get talking.